Okay. Here we go. Are we ready?
Yes,
No,
ready.
don't do that.
Okay.
They would think bad at us.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Caffeinated and Curious. Thanks for tuning in to all of our episodes so far, and we are so excited to have you here with us today. I'm going to hand it over to Iris to introduce our guest, and yeah, I'm excited for this.
We're so excited about this one. We're so excited. First of all, it's our first guest on the podcast, so thank you so much for that. But this is the incomparable, the amazing, the super intelligent, fabulous, incredible, she is the friend that I know for the longest. She is Xiomara Guevara, and we grew up together in Hoboken, Xiomara and I, and I have been looking forward to this interview, I think, for a very long time, because even for Simply Iris, we talked about doing an interview, but we never got to do it. And it's very interesting and it's very intriguing because she knows me probably the best out of anybody besides my husband, who knows me for about the same amount of time as Xiomara does. But Xiomara and I have been friends since forever. I don't think I can remember when we even met, because the only measure I have is that my parents did go back to Puerto Rico after I was born, and we lived in, some part of Jersey City or something until about a year, and then we came back when I was, I guess, around 3. So perhaps that's when we met, because we lived in the same building. My family, 7 of us, we lived in a basement apartment in this building that was behind a grocery store, and Xiomara and her family lived on the first floor. So we basically, kind of met right away. So Xiomara is an only child, and to her parents, and so when we lived there, I would spend a lot of my time just going to her place, because I'm the middle of 5, and often ignored or a pain, and so meeting Xiomara and going over to visit her and her mom and dad was always such a fun time. But I have to say, it was also the ability to go somewhere and have parents allow me to just be me. I didn't have to, I am the daughter of a pastor. We went to church. Church was a big deal for our family, and it was a very strict household. And so going to Xiomara's house, her mom was fun and just lively and just youthful, and she still is. I mean, she was just youthful and fun, and she would just be mischievous with me. We would just do these little things, and even do a little pranks here and there to
Many
Xiomara.
pranks.
But we would dance. I would listen to music that wasn't, that was different music, and loved it, and we just had so much fun. And so I did just feel like myself, and your family embraced me as just the way I was. So I gotta say, you are one of the most influential and important and impactful people in my life, honestly. And to have a friendship that has gone through so much and so many years, decades, is very special. It's a gift. So I am so grateful that we moved to that building, and that I got to get to be part of your family, and that we developed this friendship from such a long time ago, and that we are still here, and we're still such great amiga hermanas, I like to say, sister friends. So thank you so much for opening our guest features on Caffeinated and Curious, for being here today, for taking the time. And I just want to mention, we are recording on International Women's Day, so I feel like it's just so perfect that we're having this conversation today, because we get to celebrate this friendship of the ages, and this just wonderful relationship that we've developed and really cultivated and poured into. So I just think you're amazing, and I love you, and I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thank you. So I would have come sooner if you were going to say all those great words before. I think it's been so many decades, and a friendship that's become family at this point, right? I think what makes us family is that we have the shared history of where we came from, how hard it's been to get to where we're at now today. With everything, right? With families and the issues that, families can bring, but then at the same time growing up in different social classes, fighting through education systems that were not always meant for us.
Right.
Because Iris followed me to college as well.
I sure did.
At some point.
If Xiomara was going, I was going to go too.
So she did.
She knew what she was doing.
But I think that it's been so much, and now we're mothers, and have families, and now struggle with that new part of our lives and what that means. And so it's just been great. And even though there was a pause in time where we as it happens, you grow apart. I think it means something that we grew together again, and I think that's probably the best testament to the world that we have, the friendship that we have, and that no matter how many years went by, we came back and just had a conversation like no time went by, right? And doesn't happen often, and it doesn't happen so freely and so closely. So thank you. But I would love to be here, although I'm not very much into this public thing. So I'm here for you today.
I'm just
so ask again. There may be times where I'm going to say I'm going to take the fifth on some of these questions.
That's okay. That's okay.
I don't know if the viewer, sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if the viewer can see this, but I want to point this out because it speaks to like your similarities. You both brought the questions. They're both written on. They've written on them, both of them, and they're both highlighted.
Yes. Oh, they are both highlighted.
They are both highlighted. So we're just and I'm here. I'm here.
And we matched, like we were saying how like our tops matched. But yes, that's
not at all organized to be matched, like we weren't supposed to.
Not planned at all.
No. It's lovely. It's beautiful. I'm glad you saw that. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Well, thank you. This is wonderful. I do have some questions I want to ask, but of course it's caffeinated and curious. So the first question we must ask: caffeinated or curious? Caffeinated or decaffeinated?
Always caffeinated. I think decaf is like dirty water. Literally, that's why I say all the time.
Literally, you're like, why are you offering me half calf?
I did. She was like, I was like, no.
Xiomara's always caffeinated.
What's the point if it's not caffeinated?
It's on the record. Caffeinated.
This coming, I don't even drink coffee, so I can't even. I'm just paraphrasing what you're saying.
It's a whole other show, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We had to address that.
Yeah.
I think we did it in the very beginning. We're like, let's address the elephant in the room.
Tea.
Anna does not drink coffee.
Yeah, tea. Tea is where it's at.
Teas are caffeinated too.
But
that is true.
It's not just caffeinated, it's caffeinated and curious. No, we accept, okay. So tea, whatever it is, grab your mug. This conversation is getting started or continuing because we've been talking for a while now. All right, so I gave a little bit of insight into our childhood. What was some of your perspective or your views on what it was like to grow up where we grew? You said a few things there, but specifically to our friendship and having me come over so much.
Well, it was great. So, I don't remember us thinking we didn't live in the same place. Because although we lived in different apartments, we were in the same, and it was just like going up or down, knocking on each other's doors. It just seemed like an extension of the same place that we lived. Our building in Hoboken at that time is very different than what it looks like today. So I think it was just a different time to grow up. A lot of working class. Our parents were just struggling through different jobs. I do remember specifically religion being so important to Iris and her family, which was very different than in my family. And so I grew up Catholic, but my parents made sure I went to church, but they didn't. So to me, it was always very interesting that it was always a family affair when it came to Iris and her family. But also it just became part, like I knew that, she dressed differently because that was part of what was important to her, and that was okay, you know, because that like the whole family did too. But there was always these like differences in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing that was great was that I grew up in a place where we were mostly all of color, Latinos, but from Puerto Rico, or blacks. But that was it. And then my family was like the first Ecuadorian family, the first people from like South America. And so I was always explaining what Ecuador meant. So everybody was like, and I would be like, yeah, it's by the equator, therefore that's why our name is like Ecuador. But I don't know if it was the right way to do it, but I was a kid, so that was like the best way that other people understood. But Iris loved it, right? So it was great because like I have this person that loves that I'm so different, that I have this whole different culture, because I did not always fit in with everybody else because everybody had a shared flag, shared music. That was a little bit different than sometimes my own, so it was good. And then Iris was a very picky eater. She may still be, I'm not sure. But the other thing was that she always embraced my parents pushing on the Ecuadorian food and then taking us out to have other food. But she was always open to it when it came to my family, so it was great. But I think that we grew up in so many ways in that way. At the same time, I don't think we understood we were poor. Like, you know,
No.
I think we were just all the same. So nobody thought about who had a car or didn't have a car, or the fact that we shared a lot of our meals. That, you know, we went to after school programs only if we could afford it. I mean, if it's free.
They were free.
So, like, I think that those type of things just were natural for us. Like, we didn't see those things. I think in retrospect now I see all those like wonderful things that just made it. But you know, at some point we adopted another friend of ours in the building. So then we all grew up together sort of at the same time. But, you know, we were always, there were certain days that Iris couldn't be with us because she had to go to church and she'd come back. And so we were like, we planned everything around those days, you know.
That's right.
And we went to the same elementary school, but then, you know, Iris decided that high school she was going to go somewhere else. So that was like really hard, but I was very proud that she took that decision to be independent of the rest of everybody else. And she would wake up really early to take a bus to get to that school and then come back. But, you know, I think even at that point in time, you start to really admire somebody for making those decisions to be different. And, you know, and so we just were, you know, I think I saw it that way. Like, we were just like two people that were just like growing up, trying to figure it out. And then, like, okay, sometimes we made mistakes, but, you know, we had each other's back. So
that segues perfectly into what I wanted to ask next, because we always had these dreams. We had dreams of like living in New York, you know, or work there. We had dreams of like all these different things we wanted to do, but one that we shared the most was going to law school. And we just always talked about, we're going to be lawyers, we're going to go to law school. And you're a year older, so you kind of did everything kind of first before me. And that was so cool that you said that when I went to the different high school, that you saw that as like independence, and I never knew that. So thank you for sharing that, because I was like, oh, I always look up to you though. You know, but that's really cool. I did come back to high school at Hoboken, and then we got to go at least to that last year together. But we did talk about going to law school, and I remember talking about it. I remember dreaming about it. But you did become a lawyer. I did not become a lawyer, but you did become a lawyer. So tell me, where did that passion come from, and what was that journey like for you?
Sure. So growing up, Iris was always going to be the lawyer. Like, like she made me watch shows about lawyers. And then she was the one litigating. Now I know what it's called, litigating at that time. But I didn't know what it was. It was just like, that's what a lawyer looked like.
Wow.
And I was sure that I liked it, but I don't know that I knew that this is exactly what I wanted. I think for a long time I thought I was just wanted to be a diplomat and like go and help the world, be in an international world. And so that was sort of like where I was thinking during college. You know, I had to do really well, whatever I decided to do. But I didn't go to law school immediately after graduating college. I always tell people I just didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I did everything. So I am a certified teacher, K through 8. I can be a principal and things like that. But then I also went and got a master's degree in public administration because I started working in the nonprofit field, and I figured I should really know what you should do in a nonprofit and how that works, and like because if I'm going to do something, it's going to be the best nonprofit.
Prepared. Like our notes. And
I mean, I can't argue. That seems true.
So I was very lucky to go to NYU for my master's program, and in NYU they gave you the opportunity to do like international NGOs, like international nonprofits, and that's what I did because I was like, okay, great. Best career, nonprofits and international married into one, and I had an amazing experience. For my graduate sort of NYU doesn't call it dissertation. It's like you do like consultant work for a year. You actually do practical work. I worked with the United Methodist Church in Mozambique, Africa, and they actually paid for me to go and do some of that research there. That was amazing. So I said, okay, this is where I'm going to be. Like this is sort of what I wanted to do. But to your point, there was always this like itch of like, should I do law school? So after having 2 kids and working full time and having finished the master's degree, also working full time, I said, why not? So I just turned 30 and I said, let me try. If they accept me, then I'm going. Then it's meant to be. And if they don't accept me, then that's also meant to be. And at this point, I had to decide, like education. I had, the Newark public schools were offering jobs. Like, should I stay there? Should I do this? But then I had an opportunity at another nonprofit to become the executive director there, and so I went for that. And luckily, while I was doing that full time, I had the support of a board. Who are your bosses in a nonprofit, if you don't know, who said, you can go back to law school even if it's part-time, and I got accepted. I went back to law school part-time, so it took me 4 years to do it. I would do it in the evenings, and I finished. I sacrificed a lot because you're doing work, and I still did have 2 kids to manage a household.
We need to accentuate that.
So it was a hard, like I was a little bit older sometimes than most of my classmates, and also more experienced, right? So for certain classes and having conversations, sometimes I was like, that's not what happens in the real world, but it was an experience. I learned a lot. And then I had to take the bar, which also was another experience. But I did become eventually certified, with a law license to do the law. But I think it was an important moment for me, even as a nonprofit leader, because I think that having the law degree gives me knowledge, but also more respect in this field in terms of what people believe of what I'm saying. And so I think it was a good choice, even though it was a lot of sacrifice. And then eventually I got to marry another passion, which was immigration law, and being able to advocate and fight for those type of rights. And I loved that part of my life, where I was still working full time, but also able to do that and create a Center for Citizenship and Legal Immigration at the place where I worked. And so I now have gone to a different nonprofit, but now I have created another immigrant resource center, and I think that's always going to be my passion. It's my roots. It's where I come from, and so it's been great to be able to marry law in that way, and to actually advocate for people and for real policies.
As you're speaking, I'm reminded of the conversations we had as we were piecing together the podcast, and one of the things that we said was that we really want to give a platform to women, right? To be able to have a voice to the world, like to whoever watches and to whoever is willing to listen, to share what they're doing. Because of course, historically, like that's not typical, right, in our society. Although we're seeing more advancement in that area, the more places women can share their stories and can share what they're doing, the better. And so I think that was one of the key elements of the podcast that we wanted to share, and it's to create a platform for women. So it's not about us, you know, it's like I wanted to just have the space be a space where, you know, incredible women, which is just ideal that you're kicking us off with this because of just all the incredible things that you've done and how impactful you are to my life personally. So that as I hear you speak, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want people to hear. I want them to hear what you have done as a mother of two kids, as an executive director to an organization, a nonprofit organization, as you were getting a master's, all these things together. You did this, you know, in your 30s, and it's an incredible feat. It's exemplary to us all. You know, I still say, well, I could still go. I will go to law school when I'm in my 90s. You know, I think that's when it's going to happen. And at this point, I'm like, that's probably when it's going to be. But, you know, it just gives hope. And we need, as women, you know, giving each other some hope and some encouragement in what we're doing. And to see you do this coming from a family in this little place in Hoboken. Yeah, I want everybody to know that story and see and hear what you do. With that said, I mean, it's just incredible. I think the lawyer part made so much sense to what you were doing. And it became now a layered experience to like, this will help me do the things that I'm doing out of the heart that you have for community, for the immigration community specifically. And I'm so glad that you're doing it still. I did want to go back pre-law and talk about the fact that we both went to Drew University. So for undergrad. So you had gone the year before I graduated high school, and I remember coming to visit and trying to get a feel of like whether I wanted to go to school there. So kind of paving the way for me to go. So I did want to ask you and chat about some of the experiences at Drew and what that was like for you, you know, like 10 years ago.
10 years times something, probably. But we won't say what number those are the times before we said. No, I mean, you know, honestly, Drew wasn't my first choice. I wanted to go away, but because of the financial circumstances of my family, that just wasn't going to happen. And even though I did get accepted to NYU undergrad, and it was only 2 train stops away from Hoboken, just the fact that it was out of state was still you know, unattainable for me. And I didn't want to burden my parents to try to do it because of that. Now, I grew up in a family where education was the most important, and Iris would attest to this. You know, my parents were... my father had a 2nd grade education and my mother had up to a 6th grade education. But for them coming to this country and sacrificing everything that they did, they came here undocumented and had to work their way to become legal permanent residents in this country. It was never a doubt that I was going to go to college. Any college, a college. I was lucky and fortunate enough to get into some really amazing schools. Just couldn't afford it. So Drew was great. I received a lot of scholarships and financial aid, kind of covered everything, had a great reputation, still does, I believe. They're my employer today. I'll get to that in a second. One of my employers, my second employer. And no matter good or bad experiences, I always say that Drew gave me the foundation for everything else. Like, I've never found my master's degree to be difficult to do, like when it came to coursework academically and or even law school. I think academically Drew gave me everything I needed. But it was a different world for me, both by race and by social class. Financially, it was a private, small institution where people who went there, I felt, were more prepared than me at every turn. And I just couldn't always have like things that felt similar. Like we just didn't have the similar backgrounds. I didn't have a car. Everybody else might have had a car. Like so, that's where you saw the big difference in like that. I realized like, oh wow, I don't have money. And you know, my school probably wasn't the best one. I mean, I don't think I ever wrote an 8-page paper, and then freshman year when they say, hey, you have to write an 8-page paper, I was like, how do you do that? Like, how do you write that much? What do you say? they had support systems. I think I lived in the writing center for the first 2 years I was at Drew. I had a hard first year. I thought I was going to transfer to a different school because I just was like, well, this is not for me. I mean, I did okay academically, but still, it was hard. I was struggling. And, you know, racism was real and different, you know, both microaggressions and direct comments and just assumptions of who I was and what my family was. But when Iris came to visit, I didn't want to tell her it was that bad because I wanted her to come because I thought it was going to make it better. It didn't make it better because you can't change a whole system or change a way. And it's not to say that it was just Drew, right? It is just now in retrospect, we understand that that's just how it has been and how it continues to be. And so I think that, you know, Drew was a hard place for a long time, but I found something, which is what changed the rest of my life, which made me think about not law school at that time and not being a diplomat, but going into the nonprofit sector. At Drew, when I was there in my second year, we created something called the Drew Honduras Project, where you went and volunteered at orphanages in Honduras.
I remember this.
And so that changed me.
Yeah.
Because I went and did this volunteer work, and seeing the children who were just happy to hug you and they were just happy you were there and that you cared, made me realize that if I could do it here in this country, then I could do it back in the U.S. And so then I learned about nonprofits and how I can do that, and that was important to me. I mean, so I always say Drew gave me my mission in life because Drew gave me Drew Honduras Project. Unfortunately, they're not doing that project right now anymore because of the dangers in Honduras currently, but they still do sort of like a subset of it. So way before, you know, community service was a thing in schools, we started this decades ago.
That's amazing. I didn't know you started
my college had a Honduras project when I was there, but they would fundraise, send the money down, and they would create clean water systems, and then they'd go during spring break and finish it with the people who had already dug everything. Essentially, they did like the last 10% with them, and they'd get to celebrate together. So that's so cool. That it's same name, just different kind of thing, but so cool. Yeah, so for my Honduras project, what I thought was interesting, because I had been exposed to short-term missions trip, week-long things, and had friends at a different high school that were doing stuff like that. And what I thought was interesting about the way Honduras Project was set up was that they did the thing that the people couldn't do for themselves. So they could not do or didn't have the resources or didn't have the time or whatever it was to fundraise to get this clean water system because they're expensive. Like you have to dig into the ground. Like somehow they would manage to set aside that like time commitment of like we have to dig the piping, we have to dig the well, whatever, but they didn't have the funding resources necessary to say like, oh, we can get the equipment to do that. We can get the equipment that we're gonna put the pipes in the ground and like all that stuff. So that's what the team at my college did. They would fundraise for that. And this was like a really long running like project. Like it had started like at least I want to say like 20 years prior to when I was there. So they'd already like built relationships with people there and we're like, we know where we're sending this money. We know how it's going to be used. Like all of that stuff was kind of already taken care of. And then they just like, what I thought was cool is like they wouldn't take credit for anything. Like the people who were there had already done 90% of the work. They were the ones providing for their community. They were the ones putting in these filtration systems, these whatever it was. And the people who were fundraising at my school would just go down for spring break, like I said, and celebrate with them. Like, hey, we gave you what you needed, but you really did this for yourselves. We're here to be in partnership with you and celebrate that this has come to fruition now that we've worked together and like this has happened. which I think that's like a really positive way to like partner with the community.
Yeah. Empowerment more than charity. You know?
Right. It's not like, because I'm just like, I don't know. You see some other stuff and it's just like you went there for a week and what did you really do?
Right.
And this was like the commitment that people made to the Honduras project was over the course of almost the entire school year. Like they started fundraising and sending money in the fall. And then the fruition was spring break. So it wasn't just a week-long commitment or whatever. It was a longer commitment. So I just thought that was a really cool, interesting way to like structure it too.
Really cool.
Yeah.